Actually, I should tell you a story about Kadesh Barnea. Once upon a time, I went to Israel, and I was developing this program called Get Lost in Jerusalem. So, but don't laugh, you'll be doing this Get Lost in Jerusalem in 1st and 2nd Samuel. I'll take you to Jerusalem in virtual reality. So my son, we're shooting these pictures, and we went down then along here. This is Israel. We were down in the south by Egypt, and we pulled up to a checkpoint, which basically was, Egypt was on the other side, Israel was on this side, and the Israeli soldiers came up and I said, we want to drive down this road. There was a road that went down, and I wanted to drive down that road because up on this road, there was about a 2,000 high foot mountain that I could climb up and I could get a picture of Kadesh Barnea. Now, why is Kadesh Barnea so significant? Because there's a huge spring there, and the Israelites, when they wandered for 40 years in the wilderness, where did they wander? Kadesh Barnea, right there. And I could get a picture from it up on this mountain. Even though it's in Egypt, I could shoot it down. It's about 20 miles down. I could get a picture of it. So we pull up to the checkpoint, and the guy says, hey, I can't let you in there because you either have to have an Israeli soldier with you, which we didn't have, or you got to have a gun, which we didn't have. So I thought, oh, stink, I came all the way from America. This guy's not letting me in there. I know that road goes down there. And so my son and I, we back up the road. We go about half mile down the road, and I look, and I see this dirt road going off to the side. And I thought, I'll bet you anything, that dirt road goes around that checkpoint. And I thought, nuts on this, man. I didn't come all the way from America. I'm going to do this. So we get in this little car going down this dirt road, man, the rocks all over the place, bouncing and stuff. We get up, and guess what? It went right around the checkpoint. They never saw us. We got on this, it's a one-lane road, one lane. And there's not two lanes, one lane. You wonder, okay, we drive about, I don't know, it's about 50 miles down. We get up on this mountain, and I got the shot of Kadesh Barnea. I got it. Now, as we're going down, the Egyptian soldiers are driving back and forth on their Humvees, and they've got machine guns on the top of their... My son's screaming at me, Dad, we're going to get killed. These guys got machine guns. They're right there. They can shoot us. We're under 50 yards, And so he's freaking out about these guys with their machine guns. They didn't shoot at us. We got there. We got the picture and stuff. So then he was razzing me about these machine guns and getting shot. So I thought, he's desperately afraid of heights, and I know that. And there's no guardrails on this road. And this road is literally 8 feet wide. That's the whole road. So we go up on this mountain, and I come to this place, and I notice there's like a 300-400 foot drop. So I pull the car up right on the edge of it, and I pop out like I'm going to get a picture. And I say, hey, Zach, get out. Let's get a picture. He opens the car door, and it's 400 feet straight down, man. You said you wouldn't do that to your kid. I been there, did that, man. And you just see the tear on his face. He looks down, man, straight down. And he pulls in. There's no guardrails, so this place is dangerous and stuff. So anyways, then the real problem that wasn't the real problem. That was just for fun, okay? Now, what happens is you drive, it's about 150 miles down, and now what the real problem is, I come up to the checkpoint, but the checkpoint down below Beersheba, now what's the problem? On which side of the checkpoint am I now? I come down the road and I pull up to the checkpoint. The only problem is I'm on the do not trespass territory, and I'm on the wrong side of the checkpoint, and I pull up. So here's what you do when you're caught. And I thought, oh man, we are so fried. I mean, this is really bad because now we got to get out, but they won't let us out because we're in this no trespass zone kind of thing. So that's when you play the really stupid American. I'm just a dumb American. And so we pull up to the guy, and I said, can anybody tell, is Beersheba around here someplace? Well, Beersheba's here. Obviously, I know the land like the back of my hand. So is Beersheba around here someplace? And the guy looks at me, what do you mean Beersheba and stuff like that? I said, well, we must be lost. I said, we can't find our way. Beersheba, how do we get that? Beersheba and stuff. And the guy, and then by the way, I understand Hebrew. Question, can I hear him talking in Hebrew to these other guys? I can understand everything he's saying. He thinks I'm a dumb American. I can hear him. Well, it wasn't too good what he said. But anyways, so then the sergeant guy pulls up and he says, well, I'm going to Beersheba. You can follow me. I said, okay, thank you. So we pulled up on this guy's tail and then went up and anyways, got out of that mess and stuff. But that was pretty tricky, actually. And that wasn't too much fun. Yeah, Heather?
Dr. Hildebrandt, you don't like that your children are rebels?
This may be because of the corny way I raised them and stuff. Anyways, my son's doing all right. Well, I shouldn't say that, but actually, When you guys get to the Get Lost in Jerusalem program, he was 16 years old, and he wrote the gaming section of that program. I taught him how to program, and he wrote the gaming section of the program, actually, when he was 16 years old. So I'm really proud of him. He's out now. Anyways, the salary that he makes my wife get mad that I'm making more. Anyways, he's doing very well. He's out in Denver as a software engineer out there now. And he's not, I would say, of all my kids, he's introvert like his father is. He's not a rebel. The rebel is my youngest son, who's a Marine. And that's much more serious. But anyways, that's a different story. And I'm on tape. I better get out of here. Okay, so the accusation then comes. Let me first go back to this then. So they come up from Kadesh Barnea into the land. They see Hebron. They bring back all these grapes, saying the fruit of the land is wonderful. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. But what's the problem? They got grasshopper vision. They said basically in chapter 13, verse 33 or thereabouts, it says this. And they said basically, we seemed like grasshoppers to these Nephilim and Rephaim. Do you remember these giants that are in the land? The Rephaim and the Nephilim are up there, and we seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. These people are so big, they will crush us like grasshoppers. They're giants up there. We can't go up there and take the land. They're giants up there. And so they basically bail out. And so then comes the accusation against God. By the way, while the 12 spies went up there, who were the only two that didn't bail out? These names are important. Caleb and Joshua. Caleb and Joshua. Will Joshua take over for Moses after Moses passes off the scene? Caleb, did you guys read anything about Caleb in the book of Joshua?
Yes.
Do you remember Caleb got his own land? All the other people over 40 are going to die. Caleb, I call him the dog man. Caleb means dog. He's dog man. Is this guy like a fighter? And do you remember even in his old age, he went out there, he was like 75 years old. He says, I'm going to go out and take the land like when I was a kid and stuff. And so he comes, even when he's an old man taking over his territory, he's ready to fight for his land. So he is a real courageous kind of person. Caleb and Joshua, the two, and God blesses both Caleb and Joshua. But the people come up with this accusation against God in chapter 14, verses 3 and 4. Check this out. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. By the way, does God get frosted at them for this, bailing out on them? When they're ready to enter the promised land, they would not trust him to go into the land, and they want to bail out and go back to Egypt and things, okay? Now, what is God's response? What is God's response? Joshua and Caleb, as we said, Joshua and Caleb, men of courage, men of vision, and they say, we can go up there, we can do it by the strength of the Lord, and they got voted down and things, and so, does the minority always wrong? Here you got the minority, 2 against 12, 2 against 10, and the minority was right here. They should have gone up into the land. Joshua and Caleb are blessed by God. But now what's the problem? Does God get torqued at the people? God's response, chapter 14, verse 11. The Lord said to Moses, notice how he does it. He does it in rhetorical questions. Here's God now coming on with rhetorical question. How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me in spite of all the miraculous signs? If only I could see God do a miraculous sign, I would believe in God for the rest of my life. You ever thought that? If only God would do a miracle in my day, that I could see a miracle from God, I'd believe in him the rest of my life. Question, did these people see the miracles of God? Yes. Did they believe in God? No. Even with miracles, human beings don't believe in God. They had the miracles all over the place. Manna every day, water from a rock. They still would not believe in God. How long will they refuse to believe in me in spite of all the miraculous signs I have performed among them? And then God says this, I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them. But I will make you, Moses, into a nation greater and stronger than they. And Moses says, God, these people have been a pain in my backside too. Do it, man. Go for it, God, and make me into a nation. That's a great idea, God. I like that. No, wrong Moses, okay? What does Moses do? Moses then disagrees with God. Does God say he's going to strike the nation down? God says, I'm going to strike the nation down, and Moses, I'm going to make you into a nation greater than they are. That's what God says. Verse 12, God says, I'm going to strike them down, I'm going to make a nation greater than you are, largely as a result of their unbelief and holding God in contempt. But now, what's Moses' reaction? God's reaction. How does Moses argue with God? Moses actually argues with God. God says, I'm going to wipe them out. Moses says this. Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of the land about it. Then let me jump down to verse 16. And the Egyptians will say, the Lord was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the desert. In other words, Moses is saying, God, your reputation's at stake. The Egyptians are going to say, hey, God brought them out of Egypt, good enough, but he couldn't bring them into the promised land, so he killed them in the desert, because God wasn't strong enough to bring them into the land. So God, if you destroy them in the desert, that's what the Egyptians are going to conclude. Your reputation's on the line here. And then Moses continues. Then the second part of his argument, he says, now may the Lord's strength be displayed just as you declared. God, you're mighty, your strength. Declare it. Here is your strength, God. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in hesed, abounding in loyal love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Now, where does the statement where he said, God is slow to anger, abounding in love, does anybody remember when Moses was hid in the cleft of the rock, that God passed by, and it was said that God was slow to anger, abounding in love? Moses is quoting that back to God here. And so what you get is Moses is saying, God, you can't destroy them because of your character. Your character is one who is slow to anger, slow to love. You're a forgiving and a loving God. You can't destroy them because of your character and your reputation. So Moses is praying to God, and then what happens? Down in verse 20, we see what happens. God does not strike them down. God does not strike them down. Verse 20, God says this, and the Lord Yahweh replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. I have forgiven them. God says in verse 20, I have forgiven them, Moses, as you asked me to do. Does prayer make a difference? Does prayer make a difference? God says, and let me read the verse explicitly, the Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of the men who saw my glory and the miraculous signs I performed in Egypt will go in. So that means that they wander for 40 years and all the older people that are over 40 die. Yeah, all the older people die, 40 years in the wilderness, and anybody that saw it coming out then doesn't. And does the next generation go into the land with Joshua? You guys just read that. The next generation goes in. The old generation died out. Did God strike them down, or did he spare them as Moses, he says, I spared them as Moses asked? This raises the question, another question, about the nature of forgiveness. Is it possible to be forgiven, and yet there's still consequences? Is it possible to be forgiven, and yet there's still consequences? When I was younger, I thought, well, you're forgiven, and all the consequences just evaporate, so that you don't have to face the consequences. You do stuff, and you just pray to God for forgiveness, and God lets you go. No, there's no consequences. Remember I told you guys the story about the time my brother stabbed me and stuff in the arm? Okay? Now, question, did I forgive my brother? No. Did I forgive my brother? And the answer is, yeah, I forgave him, okay? But question, was there still a scar on my arm? Yeah. Okay? So in other words, it was forgiven, but were there still consequences? It's kind of like, I told you about my friend Eric, there's a drunk guy who kills a young person, okay? The drunk kills a young person. Is it possible for the parents to forgive the drunk that killed their son? It's possible for parents to forgive the person. Question, is the son still dead? Do the consequences still stand? So I'm telling you is, be careful. Consequences can follow, even with forgiveness, okay? Consequences can follow. And these people were that way.